This is Me Before Mom, the podcast that helps moms stay connected to themselves while doing the most important job they'll ever have. And I'm your host, Bert Anderson. Hey, it's Bert coming back to you with my brother-in-law, James, Dr. James Ankrum. And you guys are listening to Me Before Mom, and I'm acting a little ridiculous today because COVID-19 is still here. And I think we're entering the second wave. Am I correct, James? Or have we already gotten there?
It depends on where you live. This is our third wave.
And you're in Iowa?
Yeah. But some places second wave, some places third wave.
I don't know what Minnesota. I just stopped watching the news, to be honest. It's depressing. It's a little depressing. So many questions, James.
Yeah. Let's talk updates.
Yes, let's talk updates. Okay, first things first, the thing that has been on my mind this week as I realized like my kids' school went to hybrid because the elementary school was all day, every day in person, and now they are going to be moving to a hybrid schedule until March. That was when I kind of was like, oh, this is really serious. This is not like it was in the summer. And then I started thinking about Thanksgiving. And then I started thinking about Christmas. And then I started thinking about New Year's. And so is there any possible way to get together with your family? And if you have people who are vulnerable, can you like prepare ahead of time to lessen risk of exposure?
Possibly. It depends on how flexible you and your family are. You know, if you're going to go by guidelines and really try to mitigate risk, but you still want to get together, you need to decide if you are willing to make trade-offs in other areas. So, for example, if you look at what, say, like Olympic wrestling sports or Olympic sports like Olympic wrestling, they've got trials coming up, and you know their guidelines are basically to self-isolate for 7 to 10 days prior to traveling to any kind of competition. And so if we apply that same kind of idea to the holidays, the question is, okay, well, if you want to get together for Thanksgiving or for Christmas the week or two prior, what activities would you cut out to reduce your risk of exposure before going to visit family?
Right. So like Thanksgiving is with our family this year. You and me, James, making a turkey. Maybe. He's laughing. You can't see his face, but he is laughing.
By you and me making a turkey, you mean I make all these side dishes.
Yep. And I focus solely on the turkey.
And you focus on one thing.
But it was still a very successful Thanksgiving.
It was.
It was 2 years ago. But so if we were, so do we have to like quarantine ourselves for 7 days, or is it 10 days, or is it 14 days?
So it's all on the spectrum of risk, right? So, you know, the stricter you would be in your quarantine, the more certain you are that you weren't exposed.
Mm-hmm.
But if there are other areas, so if you normally go to, you know, in-person church services, you know, the week or two before, maybe you should transition to online.
Mm-hmm.
If you normally do, you know, extended in-person, like grocery shopping, cut that back and do delivery, you know. Mm-hmm. You know, if you normally go to the gym in person.
He's looking at me because I do go to the gym in person.
You know, that's a really high risk activity. You know, there was the spin class up in Canada a couple weeks ago that something like 50 or 60 people got sick in one spin class.
Those spin classes are very crowded.
They're crowded, but Canada has very low case rates as well. So you can walk around thinking that your chance of exposure is pretty low, but that activity itself is really high risk.
Right.
So yeah, just thinking about what are your riskiest points of contact with the broader population and what can you do to lessen, you know, the chance you pick something up.
So like kids though in school. So my girls will be going to school. Well, all three of my kids will be going to school on Mondays and Wednesdays. They have to wear a mask all day, every day. Teachers are doing the best they can to make kids stay distanced. Mm-hmm. Do you pull them out of school?
That's a good question. And again, it's on the spectrum of risk, that if you wanted to be certain then that you didn't have exposure, then yeah, you could pull them out. Now, I will say there's been some large studies that have been done on school-age children, and what's promising so far is it doesn't look like school is a vector for spread. So basically what they're seeing, is that if you look at the rates of positive cases in schools, it looks just like or even a little bit less than the surrounding communities, which means it's what you'd expect if school wasn't a special place to spread. And there's very little cluster outbreaks in schools, at least for younger kids. So if your kids are younger, like
kindergarten,
elementary, under 12, under 10,
yeah,
like the younger they are, the less they seem to spread to other people. They can
this
get
is
it.
just so this is the weirdest virus ever.
It is weird. It's weird in that it doesn't seem to really care for kids that much, in a good way.
Yeah.
Like their case is super mild. They don't spread that much viral particles. And what we're doing in school already as far as mitigation, like the masks and the hand washing and reducing density of classrooms, all that helps so that school isn't a place where there's lots of spread. So it's really on that, depending on your situation and your tolerance for risk, how many kind of touch points can you reduce? And once you've done all that, is it enough for you to feel comfortable potentially still exposing family members?
I hate this.
It's a really tough decision.
It is. It's so hard. It is. It's so hard. And I don't know. I'm all in my feelings because I saw a video of my son the other day as a baby laughing and being so sweet. And then my husband pointed out to me that we have like 3 or 4 Thanksgivings with him before he goes to college. Like my side of the family has 3 or 4 Thanksgivings.
Okay, because it's every other year?
Yes, because it's every other year.
Got it. Okay. I was going to say, you're kicking him out at what age?
At 15. You're out of here.
Get out.
No, but I'm just like all in my feelings because I just don't want to miss all these family times and the memories. But it is just one holiday. Or is it just one holiday? That brings me up to my next question. Are things really going to get as bad as it seems like they are?
We're on a really bad trajectory right now.
Everywhere?
Yeah, most places. It's really, at least the United States and Europe are really bad right now. US by far doing the worst out of this, and certain states doing really bad. So that's not a good thing. It's difficult because some areas got spared for a relatively long period of time. I think got tired of the restrictions and the mask and not being able to do the things they want to do. And then the virus came. And so it was like we'd spent their patience. Their lockdown patience already was spent before the threat really was at their door.
Right. Like Utah and North Dakota. I was listening to a special report on NPR News about North Dakota. And
North Dakota's had it bad. They also have, with the oil fields up there, they have a lot of trucking and workers coming and going. So there's just a lot of opportunities for people to bring in the virus. And then the housing situation of those workers is pretty dense as well. A lot of people that are working long hours away from families. So, you socialize by, going to the bar or a restaurant after work. And even lots of parts of rural Iowa and Minnesota were like this, that, the cities were kind of getting hit, but a lot of the rural counties weren't. And now they're getting hit hard.
And now it's like, oh, this is actually a real thing.
Yep.
But Europe has imposed major restrictions.
Ireland just went into another lockdown. I think it's a 14 or 17 day
and it's like
lockdown.
Hardcore, because we have a cousin who lives in Ireland and and you have to have like a special sheet of paper to go outside of your house.
Yep. There's very limited reasons why you can leave. Yeah.
Including picking your mother up from the airport. That was my aunt. But I don't think that there's any way we could actually, like, is that going to help in Europe, or is that? I don't know.
It does help. I mean, so the lockdowns did really squash the spread of the disease, more than letting it, because they got it down to a point that they could actually trace who has it. So tracing, we talked last time about like ideally you would test, isolate, and trace.
Mm-hmm.
And so you'd figure out who has it, you'd isolate them, and then you'd figure out who they'd have contact with.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas most of the US is in the opposite end of uncontrolled spread, which is just you have to assume that everybody could potentially have it.
Gosh. So if you guys wanted to know, I'm drinking an alcoholic beverage right now for this very reason.
Yeah.
It's a little stressful.
You need your numbers really low to be able to get that isolate, test, trace in place. So otherwise, yeah, you can do it, but it's like for every one that you, like right now in the US, the estimate is that there's about 40 to 50% of the cases that we never even get diagnosed.
Because it's not asymptomatic.
Or people don't get tested.
Oh, I can understand that though, because
I've had colleagues and friends who have, they've called the hotline, see if they should get a test. They had a cough and a fever, but you're low risk category and they live alone and they can work from home.
And so it's like, no,
don't bother getting a test. Just that, just isolate yourself for a bit and let us know if it gets worse. And so there's numbers like that are getting a lot worse.
Well, and there's
just a lot more people out there that have had it that we don't know.
Right. So my youngest, Kira, had a sore throat and a fever for like 45 minutes. She had a fever, which I think is very bizarre. And I know it was 45 minutes because I was watching it like a hawk. So I told the school that she had a low grade fever of 100.4. And because I said 100.4, everybody stayed home. We all stayed home. And of course, this happened on a holiday, so nothing was open. But even trying to get a test for her was ridiculous. It was just, so it's like, it's so hard because we are in this place now where we need testing and we have to rely on testing, but it's so hard to get tested. We went to, Minnesota has a few free places. It like rotates. So I just looked up one of those things and we went in and it was super smooth. It was like you reserve your time and walk in, they hand you a paper mask and walk in, do the swab and walk out.
Yep.
Super easy.
Yep. But places that, countries that have done the test and trace, they'll have 4 cases and their response will be, 10,000 tests. Like they'll screen city blocks, every single person.
We're just like not doing that at all.
And we're just like, stay at home. And if you've been, I think our rule right now is if you've been with somebody for unmasked within 6 feet for 15 minutes is what it was. And there was some discussion on if it should go down, but that's a pretty low bar.
Yeah, 15 minutes is really
unmasked within 6 feet. I mean, that's
yeah.
So we're not erring on the side. I mean, again, like it's a risk tolerance question, and the countries that are doing the test and trace isolate are going on the side of spend the resources so that we can open up faster, where we've gone the opposite route of don't spend the resources up front, and then it kind of leads to this lingering effect.
Yeah. So that really sucks.
The good thing is that progress is being made in treatments and in vaccines, well as
so let's talk about the vaccine, because the last time we chatted, we talked about just the vaccine process and Operation Warp Speed. Or not it's it is a ridiculous name. Who came up with the name?
Well, the U.S. military is involved, so I feel like
that's why.
It's got to have a cool operation name, right?
It does have a cool Operation Warp Speed. They should do like Operation Light. What does it mean? Oh my gosh, I'm a sci-fi nerd and I don't even remember.
Speed?
Thank you. Yes. I had a little bit of a brain fart there, guys. Sorry. Gosh, I'm like making Star Wars fans everywhere roll over, which is sad. So, James, big news. Somebody had a severe reaction to one of the vaccines. That's all we heard about.
Yep. So,
which is understandable that there's going to be some type of side effect, right?
Well, so let's back up a little bit. So
Okay.
when you do these trials, they're huge for starters. So all these vaccine trials are trying to do like 30,000 patients in each one. So they're
Mm-hmm.
really big studies. And the whole time that you're in a trial like this, if you're a participant, anytime you have a symptom or something happens, you report it to a monitoring board. So the people that are running the study and monitoring it are always taking in safety data.
Mm.
And then there's your regular checkups as well to see, like, do you have antibodies against the virus that might be suggestive of immunity, or did you come down with symptoms of the actual disease, and all this stuff. So the monitoring is to stop the trial if it looks like there are bad side effects.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's tricky is, the people monitoring it don't know which patients got the real vaccine and which of them got which
The
of them got the
placebo.
placebo. And so it takes time
Oh,
then to figure out, okay, what group were they in?
right.
You know, is there any other explanation for these? 30,000 people, you're likely to have a lot of other
Well, yeah.
health
And
stuff.
I signed up to be like
Yeah,
a test
yeah.
vaccine person. It's a
I
very
th-
simple process.
yep, I threw my name in there. Didn't get called, but
I didn't either.
yep.
I kind of
So,
wanted to be part of history. Ben had a little bit of a cow.
yeah.
He plays
Um,
it safe though. I like to be a
Yeah, I mean
rebel.
there are potential for adverse events, but the idea is that, okay, well, if we do trials with 30,000 people, that's enough to see if there are what the adverse events are. So, we want things like you get a flu shot, your arm's sore for the day, you
Right.
whine, your spouse makes fun of you.
Right.
Oh, just a flu shot.
I
You
don't
feel
think
tired.
I don't think your wife does that. My guess is you're the one who whines.
I whine, she makes fun of me.
And Laura's like,
Yeah,
get over it.
yeah. Um, but you
She's a
know,
redhead though, and her
you
pain tolerance is higher. Okay,
you
go
want
on.
you want that little response. It's a sign that your body's reacting to the
Right.
virus.
That was my other
Right.
question. Because it's not a bad thing to kind
What
of
you
have
don't
these
want is it's
responses.
so bad that it's debilitating, and
Right.
you don't want pain without any kind of gain, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So they're monitoring the whole time, and they're going to stop it the whole trial if there is a adverse event, and then they follow it up to see, okay, is there an explanation for it, or does it appear to be linked to the actual vaccine? Like, is there any
Right.
sign in the blood tests or whatnot that it was caused by the vaccine? And
Do
then
they
they
have
also
to
look for other patients to see if any of them had similar
that
issues.
was my next question. Do they do so like with this, I'm assuming it's a shot people are getting tested for.
Yep.
So then they stop the trial. Do they then go back to everybody and ask everybody who's in the study? Gosh, this has got to take like a ton of time.
It does. It takes a lot of time and a lot of money. These trials are many millions of dollars to run.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so everybody's being monitored the whole time anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you're in contact with with the researchers the whole time. So when they say it stopped, what they mean is that these, when I say 30,000 patients, they don't go out on a Tuesday and inject 30,000 people. Like, they start recruitment, and over months they'll get 30,000 people their
Okay,
first
got
shot.
it. Yeah.
And so if you're 10,000 patient vaccines administered and get an adverse event, you stop giving any more shots until you figured out
Mm-hmm.
what was this just a normal random event that this person had, or is it linked to the actual product we gave? And if so, is it something that we've seen in other virus develop or vaccine development in the past?
Right. The other thing I wanted to talk about, because I was reading an article on Stat News, which is your
Yeah,
non-biased news source.
yeah,
So the vaccine versus treatment,
yeah,
Regeneron thinks
yeah.
this is the headline. In the race to develop a coronavirus treatment, Regeneron thinks it has the inside track. Now, this is a very old article from
What?
February.
Oh, okay.
But is it better to have a treatment, or is it better to have a vaccine? I mean, ideally, you want both.
Yeah, you got it. Ideally, you want both.
Okay.
The vaccines, any kind of vaccine. So we only have like 25 or 26 developed for all pathogens in the world. We have like 26 vaccines. So,
Oh, I guess I would have thought it was more.
yeah, we don't have that many. Like they're
Yeah.
really, really hard to make. The pathogen needs certain characteristics for it to even be possible. We've been trying for like almost a century for the malaria vaccine,
Oh, really?
and we don't have it. Like,
Wow.
so vaccines are hard. But if you can get one to work, they're so cost effective
Mm,
because for, pennies to $1 per dose, you can prevent, millions of people from ever getting the disease. You can save young people from dying.
yeah,
So they're the bang for the buck is really high with vaccines. So if you had to choose between treatment or vaccine, I would choose a vaccine every time.
for sure. For sure.
The treatments are helpful too because you're often in a situation where you don't have a vaccine.
Right.
Um,
Like malaria.
like with most viruses and pathogens out there, we don't have a vaccine. So treatments are your next best thing. The Regeneron is part of it. It's not unique. It is a antibody. You probably heard it being called a
Yes.
cocktail.
Yes, I'm reading. I just clicked on
Yep.
another article about that.
Yep. So there are different types of therapies out there, Regeneron and others like it. Eli Lilly has another one that's an antibody-based treatment. Antibodies are what your body's own defenses are. So you've got specific immune cells in your body that they figure out what the virus looks like, and then they make these little cool proteins that look like Y's, like the letter Y,
Really?
that circulate through your body and
At all
bind and kind
times?
of when you have a response, like
So
a
people that went and
exposure.
got like tested and they did the antibody test, was it
So,
actually
so what people often
tell
confuse
anything?
is an antigen test and an
Oh,
antibody. An antigen and an antibody are two different things.
well, okay.
So,
High school biology, let's go.
no, it's okay. So Regeneron is cool. So basically, if you think of like for a coronavirus viral particle to get inside your cells, it needs a way to stick to a cell. So think of
Okay.
it like Velcro, right? It's got a hook or something on it, and your cells have loops.
With
And
the
if they,
crown.
yeah, and if they get close to each other, they'll loop onto it.
Okay.
Well, like if you've washed something that has Velcro on it like 1,000 times, it gets all those
Yeah,
little fuzzies on it and it doesn't stick as much.
right.
Think of
Like
an
cloth
antibody.
diapers.
Antibodies are like all those little fuzzies that get on the Velcro so it can't stick that well.
Oh, that is a great illustration.
So basically, it just makes it, the virus isn't killed, it's not eliminated, it's still there, but it can't actually stick to a cell anymore, so it can't actually get inside. And so, as long as the viral particles stay outside, your immune system can still see them and mount a defense against them, but the virus can't actually make copies of itself. So,
Oh,
it
and
can really.
Regeneron, there's not a lot of doses available.
So antibodies are so hard to make. They're the thing that your immune cells make, and we have a really labor intensive, resource intensive way. We actually use cell culture. So we actually use a type of cancer cell
What?
to make the antibody for us. So we have a whole bunch of cancer cells that have been fused with an immune cell that makes the particular antibody we want. And using billions of those cells, they make all the antibody. They kind of spit it out into the liquid growth media that they're sitting in. And we
Interesting.
take that media and then isolate the antibody from it. We purify it. And so you need tons of resources to make these types of antibodies.
So so if they did the antibody thing, would they just have like millions of COVID cells?
No.
It's
So
just cancer cells.
like I said, the antibody is what your body uses to defend.
Correct.
You have a cell in your body that makes it.
Got it. Okay, so I'm thinking about.
So if I can take that immune cell in your body that makes an antibody that's good at blocking
Right.
the coronavirus or sticking to it, I can fuse it to a cancer cell.
Okay.
And I do that because cancer cells are great at growing, right?
Yeah, they are.
So now I've got a cell that can make something I want, but can't really make millions of copies of itself.
Right.
I got something that makes millions of copies of itself, but can't make the antibody. if I fuse them together to make one like mutant cell, now I've got something that can both make the antibody and millions of copies.
That's so cool.
So
Have
yeah,
I am interrupting for pop culture.
go for it.
Have you seen the Storybots episode about viruses?
I haven't.
Oh my gosh, it's a really good one. But it talks about that with the antibodies. They're like the builders. They have like this wall. You should watch it. It actually gave Kendall like nightmares. She was afraid of germs. But
antibodies are my favorite protein, so they're really cool.
They're really cool. So the antigen is the fuzzies on the Velcro.
The antibody is the fuzzies
on the Velcro.
Yeah.
What is the antigen then?
The antigen is the thing that the antibody sticks to.
Got it.
So if it's
antigen is bad.
Yeah. So if we're measuring antigen, we're measuring pieces of the virus itself.
Okay. And once you have the virus, do you like have little antigens in your body at all times?
You have antibodies in response to it, but your immune system should get rid of all the antigens.
Got it. Sorry, guys, if you're listening to this and you're like, okay, come on, Bert, seriously. I didn't
antibodies
like
are super
science.
Cool.
Yeah, they are.
The antibodies are, if you've heard of convalescent plasma, that was a big thing for a while. And no, okay.
Oh, for COVID?
Yeah, for COVID.
Yes, people going and giving their plasma.
Yeah, they're doing that because your plasma is where your antibodies are.
Okay.
So if I take all the liquid and get rid of the cells of your blood, that's your plasma. That's where all the antibodies are.
I don't know why I thought that there was an antibody test, because you would have to go into like plasma to get that, right?
There are some antibody tests to test if you have immunity. But what most people are thinking of, either they've taken a PCR test or an antigen test.
Okay.
But an antibody test would be, did you have it in the past?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. So cold and flu season.
Yeah.
On top of COVID, yet another reason to stay away from people and to stay away from others. Do you have any insights or advice on how to do masks? Are still going to work?
Masks will still help for the same reasons. They're not protecting you, but they're protecting others.
Mm-hmm. Aren't they protecting you somewhat though?
Probably a little bit.
Okay, I hope so.
Just a little bit.
Because there are some people who do not wear masks, and it kind of scares me. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah, so they won't stop your exposure, but they will reduce it.
Got it.
And yeah, that does matter, and especially in how bad of a case you end up getting.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So masks, 6 feet of distance.
Everything helps. So what's kind of cool is if you look at Australia's flu numbers for their winter, which just ended.
Oh, I heard about this. Yeah.
They're like almost non-existent. Like the flu was just crushed by. I mean, now Australia had much bigger lockdowns. How much of that will transfer here, I don't know. But their coronavirus measures really crushed the flu outbreak.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really encouraging.
That is really cool. So maybe we just need to do this all the time now. I don't want to.
No, thanks.
This is no way of living. But I mean, my gosh, like I remember thinking back to when this all was going down, and I remember having a conversation with you and being like, James, is this going to be like forever? And you're like, no, I don't think so. Like maybe 6 or 8 more weeks. And then it just kept getting longer and longer.
Yeah.
And longer.
Yeah, and you thought I was crazy with the 6 to 8 weeks.
I did.
I was way off.
I know, you should have added many more weeks to that. So when the vaccine is developed, and here's my other question with the vaccine process. So they stopped that vaccine. Does that mean they halted all the others trials that are going on?
No, pretty much all the trials got restarted.
Okay.
So there were a couple that had cases. I know at least one of them, the effect, like the reaction was actually in a placebo person.
Interesting. Okay.
But I don't remember which one it was. But yeah, pretty much everybody is back running. they are
Okay.
delayed from where they thought they would be, both because of recruitment issues or just getting people enrolled fast enough, but also people aren't getting sick as fast as they thought they would.
Oh, interesting.
And the way that these trials work is you run them until a certain number of total people have tested positive for coronavirus.
Mm-hmm.
And then you stop and see, what is the difference between people in the vaccine group versus the placebo group? Like, is it 10
Yeah.
in the vaccine group and 100 in the placebo group, or is it 55-55? And until
Yeah.
you get to a certain number, you don't have the statistical power to actually say that, yes, this vaccine actually works.
Mm-hmm. So it's just kind of
We're waiting.
we're just waiting.
We're just waiting on people to.
And nobody really knows when it's going to be ready, right?
It seems like people are now really talking more likely, possibly. So here's the thing with the rollout is, what do you mean by ready? Do you mean like you'd be able to get a vaccine, or like
No,
anybody will get one?
I'm assuming that it's going to be rolled out to, those who are at higher risk
Yeah.
than the rest of
There's
us.
a bunch of priority plans that have been out there, and the FDA had a like public comment period where they solicited feedback on who should be able to get it first. And there's pretty wide consensus that frontline workers should
Yeah.
get it first, healthcare workers, and then the high risk nursing homes and long-term care, and then through the other kind of risk categories. There's been discussions on, should they do the emergency use authorization just for frontline workers, or just
What does that mean?
Basically release the vaccine before all the data comes in.
Okay. So hopefully it's okay.
Well, that's the game you're playing, right? So like the infection fatality rate for people over 70 is still like today is like 6%. It's been as bad as like 12 in some areas of the world.
Yeah.
And so it's like, that's really bad.
It is really bad. And it's so sad. Like, I was talking with somebody, because honestly, I wish I could just stick my head in the sand and pretend that none of this matters. And I wish I could. Either way, like, if you have lived a full life and you are old and you get this thing, it is a horrendous way to die.
Yeah.
Because you are all alone. That is like, that in and of itself terrifies me. And it just makes me so sad. I just, yeah.
So that's probably the first thing we're going to see is, if a company wants to try to get basically early authorization just for certain high risk groups, while they're waiting on because it's not just, first you got to get to your does it work number, that certain number of positive cases, so you can compare if you had less in your vaccine group. But then there's also a monitoring phase where you're looking for, okay, well, 3 months out of the vaccine, are you getting a response, like any adverse events, or do you still have immunity?
Yeah.
Like, does it last for how long does it last?
Right.
And how
I was
much
listening.
of that,
oh, sorry, what?
No, just how much of that do you want to know before you grant someone approval to sell a vaccine? Because there's some thought that if you give people a vaccine that nobody trusts, if you give them a vaccine that they think works, that actually say it only has like 6 weeks of protection, like that's way worse than not having a vaccine.
Yeah.
Because you go back to your normal life thinking that
everything
you're
is fine,
and you're not. So false confidence is really bad.
Yeah. I was listening to CNN's coronavirus fact versus fiction. Have you listened to that? It's with Dr. Sanjay Gupta. I love it. It's great. Some of the episodes I don't listen to because I'm like, nope, it's gonna make me it's gonna make me paranoid, crazy. So I'm not gonna go down that. But they had one of their reporters is actually in one of the vaccine trials, and he said he has to record how he is feeling every single day for the next 2 years.
Yeah, they have long-term follow-up. Now I will say he can drop out at any time.
Oh, that's good to know.
So that's part of international standards for human research, is that you cannot coerce or require somebody to stay in a study. So if you just say enough's enough, they can go. Which is another big challenge with any kind of big study like this, is you have to plan for your dropout rate of how many people are going to just not show up to their 6-month appointment.
Right. So that's why they have to get so many people.
Yep.
So I'm looking at, I don't know, did you find the article about the FDA, whatever you were just talking about, where they asked people what they thought? I don't know, October 29th. It may be time to reset expectations on when we'll get a COVID-19 vaccine.
Yeah, I saw that one.
Yeah. And it just seems like it seems like there was just all of this rush to kind of put it out there and to push it out there from people who are in offices.
There's wishful thinking on, which I understand. Like, it's a terrible situation, and so a little optimism can be helpful. Like, let's be aspirational. You know, we would have all been pretty down if it was like, well, the fastest we've ever done this is 4 years, so just hang tight.
I know.
So, but on the flip side, you know, a little bit more education on what the process will be. And what's making a lot of people uneasy is the feeling that the approval or emergency use process will become a political issue instead of one that's just, well, we have our norms of judging whether or not something is safe and effective. Let us actually put this through the norms.
Right. Because the scientists are the ones who know what they're doing.
Well, not just that, it's that, let's say there is a really bad adverse event. Like, if it happens in a group of 30,000 people, you have 1 or 2 people that tragically has an adverse event. If you then give that vaccine to 300 million people.
Oh, that's a lot more people.
A lot more people. And now you have hundreds and thousands of people that are having those really bad adverse events.
So should people be afraid? Because this is the other argument I've heard too, is when a vaccine does come out, like, I'm not going to be the first one to take it.
You know, if it goes through the normal process, so not an emergency use authorization, but it goes through the normal, you know, we did a 30,000 patient study. We showed that it's effective. We did follow up for, 6 months and showed that there's no serious adverse events or very low risk. Then I'd feel comfortable like jumping in line to take it.
So you would be okay doing that.
Yeah,
but if
that's the normal process that we go through, and it's a big enough group of people getting tested to identify the likely adverse events.
So if it didn't and it got pushed to the emergency use,
then it's a whole other issue of, well, based on how much data,
right?
Like, what do we even know about? And, because a lot of this data doesn't get published until the study is done. So, I wouldn't want to get something that, if I'm not myself in a really high risk situation, like I have asthma, but I'm not over 70. I'm not a frontline medical worker.
You're active.
Yeah. So for me, then the risk is, okay, if I don't know how safe the vaccine is, then I would wait.
Yeah.
Whereas if I was a, emergency room doc and I was seeing people every day, and then like, it might still be like, yeah, I could have an adverse event, but I could also get COVID tomorrow.
Right. Right.
But if it goes through the normal process, I really hope it will. There's a lot of energy at the FDA and a lot of pressure from the scientific community to don't cut corners, because if you cut corners, we've seen in both the Chinese vaccine and the Russian vaccine, people don't want to take it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they don't have any faith that it actually works.
No, that makes a ton of sense. So changing gears a little bit. And I know that the answer to this question is going to be, you don't know how your body is going to respond to COVID. And that's part of this that's so hard to predict, is how, people are going to respond. But I follow somebody on social media who is a long hauler, a COVID long hauler.
Yeah.
So when she had COVID, very mild case. And then I think she said like it was day 200 or so, something like that she was still experiencing. I mean, she's in the hospital and stuff, and they can't figure out, what's going on with her. I mean, that's just scary, James. Is that like the norm or?
No, it's not. Long hauler is not the norm, but taking a while to recover is often likely. I mean, even if you look at, say what you will about college football, but like, I know the Big Ten's rules, for example, is if you get a positive case, even if you're asymptomatic, it's 21 days to sit out because of the risk of heart damage to doing extraneous physical activity
Oh,
while
yeah.
having the virus.
Oh, I did not think of that either.
Yeah, so COVID, we think of it as a lung disease, but it's
Yeah.
actually a multi-organ or multi-system disease. It hits your
Mm-hmm.
heart, your kidneys, your brain, your lungs. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so your symptoms can manifest long term in a variety of ways, depending on kind of where the virus did its damage.
Mm-hmm.
And then, with all viruses, there's some more than others. There's always well, not always, but there can be the possibility of a post-viral syndrome, and you might have experienced this where you have flu and you get better, but you're just drained, like you have no
Yeah.
energy and you're
Yeah.
lethargic and headaches really easily, and that can go
Yeah.
on for like weeks.
Right.
And
And that's what that's called? I didn't know that.
yeah, post-viral syndrome, your virus is gone, but your body is kind of it's in a funk, it's in a state that's not normal.
Mm-hmm.
um, and some of that can be kind of like chronic inflammation, or I don't know all the biological roots of it, but there's some thoughts that COVID-19 long haulers could be kind of a combination of that post-viral syndrome, but also just the latent effects of multi-organ damage.
Gosh. Do you have anything positive to talk to us about today?
I mean, I said it's, the encouraging thing is that people are. So I was like reading today that the hospitalization curves are separating from the death curve, and that's a really good thing. And so basically, what I mean by that is, if you take like who's in the hospital and who dies by day, you can kind of shift them by dates and scale them, and they overlap.
Mm-hmm.
But what's happening more recently is that there's actually now a separation between those lines, which means people are still getting really sick and hospitalized, but they're not dying.
Yeah.
We're getting
And that's a good
better.
thing.
We're getting better at treating people. That is a good thing. It doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean it's like we can quit and like we beat this thing, because being alive versus dead, like alive is a pretty low bar.
That is true.
Like, there's lots of states of you're technically alive and you're not
Right.
doing okay, but we are improving in that regard. So both, dexamethasone, that steroid, has made a huge difference. The way that we ventilate people and give oxygen has improved a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's helped too. We're all around better as a healthcare system managing people that have the disease.
Mm-hmm.
So that's encouraging.
That is encouraging. What would you have to say to people who are feeling just the pandemic fatigue?
I mean, it kind of goes, you can go kind of two ways. Find something that you can enjoy. Even though you're stuck at home, there's still things you can do to, enjoy your family, your hobbies. Like, find something to enjoy,
Mm-hmm.
and do it. So you're not always like, well, I can't do this, like, because of COVID. I can't go to this football game, or I can't go to this concert, or I can't go to this
Yeah.
restaurant, or like find something that you can do. I think that's just good for our mental health. The other piece is, if you're just getting weary of it, like you said, you follow a long hauler on social media,
Yeah.
find somebody whose story that you can read and build some empathy with. Or like, I've got colleagues at my church that, like, their parents died of COVID, or they got it, and just, having those conversations of, what was it like? And yeah, just building that empathy and reminder that this is still a real thing that can
Mm-hmm.
do some real damage. And so I think that can help just provide that extra reminder of why do I put on the mask? And again, it's mainly not for you. It's mainly for everybody else.
Mainly. How sad is it though that we have to that? I don't know. I'm not going to say it. I think you know what I'm going to say.
Yeah, it is sad, but they work. They work at reducing outbreaks, and even if you do get exposed, like I said, the dose matters. There's a reason, in the early days in like New York and Boston, 20-something-year-old doctors were getting sick and dying. Well, they were healthy people, but they were getting so much virus so quickly exposed to them.
Okay, that is I never thought of that, but I suppose so, yeah.
And at that time, it wasn't broadly thought that it was airborne. We were all focused on surfaces and
I know.
Clorox wipes and hand washing, and those are good things, but the respiratory droplets ended up being a really big issue.
So what about
dose matters?
Yeah, what about since we're talking about respiratory droplets, air filtration systems?
Yeah, so I was talking to my mom about this last week, who's also a Minnesotan. Hi, Mom, if you're listening.
Hi, Lori.
Yeah, air filtration helps a lot, and it's something that's actually in a lot of schools and churches and stuff. They've invested. Gyms, I know they've invested in air purification systems.
I was there one day when they were at the gym and they were changing stuff, and I was like, "What are you doing?" And they were like, "Oh, we're adjusting."
So there's a couple things you can do with that. In some bigger buildings, they'll try to get zones of airflow, so the air is not moving through the whole space, but it's kind of sectioned off in certain parts of the room. But the bigger bit is if you can filter it with something like a HEPA or a similar filter that can actually capture viral particles.
So is that if I wanted to go and look for a home air purifier, is that worth it at all?
They will
no?
Reduce. So okay. I mean, again, if you think of it in terms of dose, they will reduce. But here's the perspective that I gave to my mom: is that most home air purifiers, they can purify, it's a certain volume of air per hour they can actually pull through.
Okay.
So it takes them a while. So for a decent size, say like family room in a typical Minnesota house, you might be looking at, okay, well, it can purify all the air in the room like twice an hour. Okay.
That's not a lot.
It's not a lot. And so for a point of reference, a normal hospital room is about, normal hospital room recirculates in the whole air in the room every 5 to 8 minutes. An operating room exchanges all the air in the room every 1 to 2 minutes.
Oh, wow.
So yes, it will help to have your air scrubbed and refreshed every, twice an hour or once an hour.
Yeah.
Better than stale air. But it's not, you're not going to get to the level of an industrial air handler exchanging system.
So you can't pretend that COVID doesn't exist if you have an air purifier in your house.
No, it's going to be that extra little bit it's going to give you a little bit of extra kind of grace, if you will.
Okay.
And so for, she wants to have a mass, women's group in her living room, a few ladies. And so we're talking about how to set them up. But I was like, well, still, like before they come over, don't have anybody in the room. And when the study's done, leave the room for the next hour.
Okay.
Like if you think about it in terms of how long this air has been exposed to people.
Yeah. So then would it help to open up a window?
Yeah. Airflow helps a ton.
Okay.
Indoor air is way dirtier than outdoor air.
Okay.
Under all circumstances.
Well, that's good to know. I feel excellent living in Minnesota right now.
Yeah. Get your purifiers going. They don't mean that you can ditch the mask and have a party and
no,
not worry about anything. They just are going to give you that a little bit of insurance. That if somebody does come over sick and you get the call of, hey, I was at your house Tuesday and now I just tested positive. Okay, well, hopefully between everything you were doing, the masks, the purifier, leaving the space when they left, you didn't get enough dose to actually get infection.
So when Kira had her little sore throat and fever thing, the rules for the kids going back to school was she was 10 days at home, I think, from the onset of it, and my older two were 14 days. So why do we, I mean, I think I know the answer to this question, but why is the person who's exposed to it longer?
Yeah, so the younger the kid, okay, so there's two things. One, Kira was already symptomatic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're assuming that she's already had it for a few days. So by 10 days, she should be done.
Oh, okay. Yep.
If you just got exposed, it's going to take a few days before you could
Right.
even display symptoms.
The incubation period.
Yes, the incubation period.
Okay.
So, yeah, we've experienced this with our holidays in the past. We had a norovirus outbreak one year that was very unpleasant.
It was terrible. It was the worst Christmas ever.
Yeah.
Except for my family, we didn't get sick.
You had already been sick.
We had, and it was a terrible.
I ended up in the emergency room.
James
your dad slept in the garage to try to avoid it.
Which is so ridiculous. And I told him, I was like, Dad, sleeping in the garage is not going to do anything.
Yeah, I just woke up with terrible
norovirus.
You can Google norovirus. It is not pleasant to have a house full of family. Everybody has norovirus.
Oh my gosh. No, it was really bad. And then Laura she was the last one down. She was the last one to like fall. And she's like cleaning the dishes, and all of a sudden she's like, oh, I think I'm going to be sick. Into the sink. And I'm like, what? Really?
Yeah. It was bad.
It was a terrible thing. Gosh. Yeah. Holidays and illnesses
can be really bad.
They can be super bad. Super bad.
It's an incubation time though, right? Of like, we didn't all get sick at the exact same time. There's a bit of a delay.
Mm-hmm.
But the other piece of it is that younger kids seem to produce less viral particle.
So is that just because they don't breathe as much?
No, I don't think so. I think it's that they actually just don't put out as much viral particle for whatever reason. Yeah.
This is just such a weird virus.
I'm glad it's sparing kids. I mean, most viruses have a U-shaped fatality curve. So they kill infants and babies, they kill the elderly, and they don't do much to people in between. And this one, it doesn't have that that left part of the U.
Mm-hmm. Thank goodness. But I mean, as a parent, I mean, it's already hard. I call it parenting, like pandemic parenting. It's already difficult to do pandemic parenting. I cannot imagine what it would be like if kids were really vulnerable to this.
Yeah.
I can't think. I think I might have had a ton of questions, but I don't know how much stuff is going to change. We could keep doing these talks for a very long time.
It'll probably be before you actually get a vaccine. It'll probably be like March or April.
Okay.
Probably is when it's going to be actually available to you.
To me. Okay. So like next fall, what do you think next fall will look like?
I think a lot of things will be closer to normal, but there's certain things that are just going to, there's certain habits that have been broken that, for example, like I could see in the future, next fall even, flu season, people wear masks a lot more routinely.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what you thought of that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we already know this to be the case for most of Asia.
Yeah.
That for either air pollution or for any kind of respiratory illness, masks are just really routine. Mm-hmm. And so there's some things like that I could see kind of staying on as being more normal, which isn't a bad thing. Mm-hmm. Or working from home when you don't feel great instead of like toughing it out to go to the office. Like,
or sending your kids. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there's some things that I think are gonna be stick with us just because they were actually good things that we learned how to do. But there's other things that will probably be back to, a closer form of normal, restaurants and
I wonder if we'll shake hands again.
Yeah, I don't know. Probably.
I don't know though, because it hasn't been. I am not a like touchy-feely person, so
I like the fist bump better.
I don't mind the fist bump. Yeah. I don't mind the elbow.
I'm not a fan of the elbow. It feels weird. I don't want to touch your elbow.
At the gym, we do feet.
Okay.
Yeah. Because you're far enough apart, but your legs can still meet. Yeah. It's weird. This is a really strange time to be alive, James.
Yeah, it's a like once in a lifetime. It's a pandemic.
I know.
Yeah.
We should be having a party. We are making history.
We're living history right now.
Right now, guys. So that is your positive note. You're a part of history.
Yeah.
Crazy. Well, James, as always, thank you for taking the time.
Yeah.
Have you made your Instagram account public yet?
I think it's always been public, but it's just me riding bikes.
Yeah. My sister and James, they are a one-car family, and James bikes to work.
I bike to work. I bike for fun. I bike for exercise. I take my daughter to preschool on my bike.
Yes. Okay. Explain how you do that, though, because the seat is weird looking.
It's called the shotgun seat, and it sits on the top tube of my bike right between me and the handlebars. And so she's got her own little bike seat, and then she's got little foot pegs that she rests on, and then she helps me steer. She's got the handlebar in front of her.
So cute.
Yeah, and in the winter in Iowa, she puts on a balaclava, goggles, a helmet, snow pants, boots, and her jacket.
They're like, oh, Helena's at school today. There's all her gear.
It's pretty funny because they take her temperature before she comes in, and it's all like, well, wait a minute, I gotta
hold on.
I gotta get off the goggles and the helmet and then the balaclava, and then we can do this.
Oh, I know. It's so great. But thanks again so much, James, for taking the time to answer my questions.
Yeah, of course.
Even though, I don't like biology, but I'm learning a lot.
It's the thing that's keeping you alive. So you can appreciate it.
I will appreciate it from now on. And
antibodies are awesome. If you really want something awesome, you can Google camel or llama antibodies.
Oh.
So if you really want to nerd out,
do they have special antibodies?
They are super cool.
Oh. Like the animal camel. It's not like...
Yeah, like the animal camel.
Well, why don't we get some of their antibodies then?
Oh, I'm pretty sure there's some companies that are trying to make a camel version antibody for lots of different things. They're super small, so they can get into more places of your body, and they can circulate in your blood longer. And
well, why have we not tried to do this longer? I mean, before.
We just discovered them not that long ago.
Oh, and llamas too?
I believe so. Yeah, camels and llamas.
See, there's more reasons to like llamas. Llama, red pajama.
That's right.
Okay, well, James, thanks so much.
No problem.
And we'll talk to you later. So, guys, as you're listening to this, you know what I'm going to say. I'm going to tell you to be kind to yourself. Wear a mask. For God's sake, always be kind. That's all we have. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to connect with me on bertmanderson.com, and please visit our website, matriarchdm.com, for all of the show notes and to hear other awesome podcasts.